Radio 1680, The Crow.
Good afternoon, my name is Kyle Collis, and I'm here with your news and sports updates to 12 o'clock. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has met with Canada's premiers today in Ottawa. We will give you more info on that meeting at 3 p.m. with the help of our reporter, Asta Pandikanan. A leader with the First Nations Fisheries Council of BC says collaboration and not politics will be the only thing that can save the shrinking Pacific salmon populations. Jordan Point says salmon runs in BC are collapsing and extinction is not an option. The council is joining with the Lower Fraser Fisheries Alliance, the Pacific Salmon Foundation, the First Nations Summit, and the Upper Fraser Fisheries Conservation Alliance to find solutions. The coalition says Pacific salmon populations have declined by more than 90% since the 1970s and warns that if stock collapses, other species whose diet rely on salmon are also at risk of extinction. Fisheries and Oceans Canada has said many salmon stocks are declining to historic lows because of the effects of climate change, habitat loss, and among other threats. Mike Menier, CEO of Pacific Salmon Foundation, says in a news release that the first step is to create a collaborative plan to rebuild wild salmon stock and help them adapt to climate change. BC's New Democrat House leader Ravi Colon says it's wise for the government to use surpluses of money in the budget to invest in people. Colon says provincial officials are aware of residents' concerns about needing greater support as prices continue to rise. These comments came after Lieutenant Governor Jeanette Austin delivered the government speech from the throne outlining a political agenda for the coming months that includes plans to introduce targeted supports for families with children and people with lower incomes, as well as a refreshed housing plan. Opposition Liberal leader Kevin Falcon says the government is great at making announcements, but its plans do not show results when it comes to healthcare, public safety, housing affordability, and other priorities. BCIT's Recreation Department is bringing back its Consistency Challenge to encourage students dropping into their facilities. Our reporter Jacob New has the story.
The challenge will reward students with prize entries for repeated visits and use of the facilities, with an Amazon Echo Dot as the grand prize. And they are not limited to just lifting weights to win. Doing any activity at the center gets an entry into the contest. Melissa Stamatovich with Rec Services says that the initiative aims to help students create consistent choices in taking breaks from schoolwork.
Consistency doesn't mean working out in the gym, shooting hoops, or playing soccer. That might mean coming in, playing Xbox, ping pong, foosball, hanging out, just a way for them to step away from studies and stress and everything else.
Stamatovich says they saw an increase in attendance to the rec center during the challenge's first run last October. The initiative goes until March 3rd. Jacob New, 1680, The Crow.
And Afro-Italian hip-hop artist and activist Amir Issa is performing at Green College UBC to celebrate Black History Month. Our reporter Carissa Chang with more.
Issa will be hosting a Q&A session after the performance to talk about his experiences with African diaspora while growing up in Italy. UBC Language and Literacy Professor Dr. Annette Henry says it is important to remember that geography plays a big role in Black cultures.
People can be francophone or anglophone or italophone and still be Black. We can say that there's not one Black culture. There's not one Black culture. And sometimes people do that. They just homogenize. All Black people are the same.
Dr. Henry adds that Issa's work shows how Black diaspora is expressed on a global scale. Carissa Cheng, 1680, The Crow.
And RCMP in Nanaimo say they've arrested a suspect after a 30-year-old man was attacked with the blunt end of an axe blade over the weekend. In a statement, police say the man suffered non-life-threatening injuries during the attack in the parking lot of the Port Place Mall on Saturday. Witnesses told officers that the victim and suspect knew each other and had been seen arguing before the incident. They say the suspect ran off with the axe after hitting the victim and he couldn't be found even with the help from police dog services. RCMP say a 39-year-old man was arrested Monday and charges of assault with a weapon are expected to follow shortly. The man hit with the axe was treated for his injuries in hospital. Some local businesses are joining forces to help give back to a community favorite charity. Our reporter Victor Gaucher has the story.
Several breweries in Port Moody are brewing up support for the Canucks Autism Network. It was Moody Ale's turn to host the collaborative brew, and for Michael Watson, co-owner of Moody Ales, it was an obvious choice for which charity they would back.
They are a fantastic charity to work with. They do a lot of great work in the community, and we have a lot of our customers who really appreciate what we're doing for them, and we can see, based on getting to know the team there, how much effort that they put in and how much it's greatly appreciated, and we just love being a part of that.
The Friend Zone IPA is available on tap at all breweries in Port Moody and in cans at Moody Ales. Partial proceeds from the sales of this beer will be donated to Canucks Autism Network. Victor Gaucher, 1680, The Crow.
And we are now joined by Victor to learn more. Victor, how did breweries decide that Canucks Autism Network was the right charity to support?
Thanks, Kyle. When Michael Watson bought Moody Ales in 2021, he made a post on their social channels asking for the public to choose a charity for them to donate partial proceeds to. So the public nominated 3. It went to a vote, and ultimately the Canucks Autism Network won.
And is this the first collaboration brew between the Brewers Row?
It's not. However, this is the first one since the COVID-19 pandemic has hit. The breweries try to collaborate once a year, and each take turns hosting the brewing process. Often the special brew will have some proceeds going towards a different charity each time. Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you, Victor. Now, Canadians that are hoping to become commercial pilots in the future say that they're waiting too long to get the required paperwork. They say it can take 6 months or more to get license applications or aviation medical certificates processed by Transport Canada. Vancouver pilot Adam Sherd says the long wait times are delaying careers at a time when the industry needs it most.
I'd imagine that, if you're like me and you're trying to apply for jobs and they're going to say, well, all right, we need to see your commercial pilot's license. Well, these people are waiting for, again, anywhere between probably 6 months, and like I said, I've heard people waiting more than a year for these license documents.
The number of insolvencies filed by Canadian businesses in 2022 was up 37% compared with the previous year. Adam Burns from the Canadian Press has more.
The Office of the Superintendent of Bankruptcy says there were more than 3,400 business insolvencies in Canada last year, up from about 2,500 in 2021. The federal regulator says the sectors that saw the biggest increases in insolvencies were accommodation and food services, as well as construction. The biggest drops were in mining and oil and gas extraction, as well as finance and insurance. Insolvency filings by consumers last year totaled just over 100,000, up from about 90,000 in 2021. Adam Burns, the Canadian Press.
And a Canadian endocrinologist whose research has helped develop therapies for diabetes and obesity, as well as 3 chemists whose work has developed our understanding of RNA, were announced among the winners of Israel's prestigious Wolf Prize this year. This was announced Tuesday by the Wolf Foundation, a state-owned entity that issues the award to promote excellence in arts and sciences. Dozens who have won this award in the past have gone on to win Nobel Prizes in the 45 years since it's been around. Staying in Canada, a new poll suggests 1/3 of Canadian households believe they're financially worse off now than they were a year ago. Lisa Laporte from the Canadian Press has the story.
58% of respondents to the Leger poll commissioned by the Association for Canadian Studies said their financial situation is about the same as it was a year ago. 9% report their financial situation has improved. Quebecers were the least likely to report their financial situation has worsened, while respondents in British Columbia were most likely to report the same. 1,554 Canadians completed the online survey, which cannot be assigned a margin of error. Lisa Laporte, the Canadian Press.
And the Turkish president has declared a 7-day period of national mourning due to the 7.8 magnitude earthquake that struck early Monday morning. Now for our weather update. Currently it's 6 degrees outside and there is a rainfall warning in effect as rain is coming down. On top of that, there is also a risk of thunderstorm this afternoon. As for the night, expect more rain and the possibility of that thunderstorm carrying on into the evening. Tomorrow we could see a mix of sun and clouds, but other than that, expect more rain for the rest of the week. We'll be right back with your sports updates.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Teresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
This is sports on 1680 The Crow.
Starting with the Vancouver Canucks, they are not in action today after yesterday's 5-4 overtime loss to the New Jersey Devils. Their next game will be tomorrow when they take on the Rangers in New York. Today in English soccer and the FA Cup, Wrexham, which is partly owned by Vancouver's own Ryan Reynolds, is in action as they are currently taking on Sheffield United. This match is being replayed after the teams had a thrilling 3-3 draw in their last match. Wrexham are 3 divisions below Sheffield United, and many did not expect them to make it this far. However, the underdog run continues. The game is currently tied at 0 in the 24th minute. Now to the NBA, the Toronto Raptors are also not playing today. However, with the trade deadline looming, they could be making some major moves soon. Players like Fred VanVleet and OG Anunoby are names that have been gathering attention from around the league. The Brooklyn Nets are also showing interest in forward Pascal Siakam, but the Raptors are reluctant on whether or not they want to make him available. This comes after the Raptors have failed to live up to expectations this season. They're currently 11th place in the Eastern Conference, which is outside of a playoff and a play-in spot. One trade that has been made in the NBA is with the Miami Heat sending Dwayne Dedmon and a second-round pick to the San Antonio Spurs. The Heat create a roster spot and move below the luxury tax with the move. LeBron James is just 36 points away from passing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's NBA all-time scoring record. And with the Lakers in action today against the Oklahoma City Thunder, there is a chance the record gets broken tonight. If not, LeBron will get another chance on Thursday when the Lakers take on the Milwaukee Bucks. Thursday's game against the Bucks will be in Los Angeles and take place on national TV. Some tickets for that game are going for as high as $100,000 to watch LeBron James break the record. Moving over to the NFL, football fans all over the world will get to watch 2 black quarterbacks face each other for the first time in Super Bowl history, with Philadelphia's Jalen Hurts playing against Kansas City's Patrick Mahomes. Hurts says he's excited for Sunday's big game.
Think about all the rich history in this game, and to be a part of such an historic event, a historic moment, it's special, And there's been so many quarterbacks before me, including Pat. Before me that laid the foundation for me to have this opportunity.
And staying with the Super Bowl, 1 in 5 American adults are expected to place a bet on Sunday's game. Rita Foley from the Associated Press has more.
50 million American adults plan to bet on the Super Bowl, wagering $16 billion in all, says the gambling industry. That's more than double the amount from last year as the legal sports betting market continues to grow. So who are they betting on? The American Gaming Association survey finds they are evenly split, 44% like the Eagles and 44% like the Chiefs. The Eagles have been favorites on FanDuel. Kickoff time is 6:30 p.m. Eastern at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. I'm Rita Foley.
Staying in the NFL, Steve Wilks has been hired by the San Francisco 49ers to become their new defensive coordinator. Wilks was the interim head coach of the Carolina Panthers this past season for 12 games where he went 6-6. The Panthers decided to move on and hire Frank Reich as their head coach. This led to Wilks being the top candidate for open coordinator jobs around the NFL. The last 2 defensive coordinators for the 49ers became head coaches. Those are your sports updates at 12 o'clock. I'm Kyle Collis. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow. Now it's time for the comment.
embargo was lifted for Hogwarts Legacy, a game centered around being a student at Hogwarts from the Harry Potter franchise. However, criticism of J.K. Rowling, the creator of the Harry Potter universe, has cast a heavy shadow over discussion of the game. Many instances of her supporting transphobic causes, including proudly proclaiming herself as a TERF or trans-exclusionary radical feminist, have soured many an opinion of the author. Hogwarts Legacy has been receiving an overall positive reception for the game. However, with Rowling's stance on trans issues, I think it's fair to call for media outlets who do cover this game to be more openly critical of Rowling's stances, especially as a lens of analysis over her works. Outlets like IGN have already put notices on their reviews of Hogwarts Legacy about Rowling's past comments and determining that they would be covering it as she had no direct involvement in its development, and that it's merely their job to determine if a game is fun or not. I think that outlets should be more vocal about their criticism of developers and the products that they support. While it's fair to be sure that devs don't suffer at the expense of their more wealthy backers, outlets like IGN and others like Polygon or GameSpot need to be quicker to call out these types of issues. The gaming industry already struggles with ethics, as can be seen in how Activision Blizzard treats their employees, or how Ubisoft heads are allowed to make racist comments and still maintain power. I think if the media was more willing to criticize the ethics of the products they cover, we could see an improvement in both the industry and the community. If they were more willing to dole out the criticism, even for products that may hold nostalgic value, I think the result would be a net positive.
It's extremely important for people to stay healthy and to stay active as much as possible.
This is 1680 The Crow, and you're listening to our feature presentation.
Hello, and welcome back to today's episode of
The Crow Chronicles.
I'm Alicia Nolasco.
And I'm Jeremy Lee,
your host. So today we're really excited. Tell us why, Jeremy.
We are really excited today because we're talking about a shark story that took place 1905, actually here in Vancouver, which is honestly kind of scary, but also really cool. Don't worry, it was 100 years ago, so...
It's fine. It's fine.
It was in 1905.
Yeah. We got to talk to marine biologist expert Juan Jose, who works in UBC.
Yeah.
And we also got to speak to
Bradley Miller. He's a historian, and both of them gave us like a lot of really good info on sharks and what people thought of them back then, as well as how the environment was back then compared to now. And honestly, let's just dive right into the story.
Let's just dive right in.
Yeah. It's July 5th, 1905. It's around 6:30 p.m. From the shores of Falls Creek, Ed Dusenberry, a man who owned several small leisure boats at the dock, is passively watching a few boys playing at the beach. Among them is 8-year-old Harry Menzies. He's playing in the shallows of the creek. Why was this young boy playing without supervision in Falls Creek at night, you might ask? Historian Bradley Miller explains.
Kids at that point in history often had a lot of freedom to roam around the city, to swim, to play in the woods. I've both read a lot and heard a lot from people from previous generations who talk about what we would now consider, or right now consider, the unbelievable amount of freedom that kids had. So I'm not surprised at all that a kid was swimming in Falls Creek at 6 a.m.
Seeing a young boy playing in the inlet might not have been odd, but seeing something else in the water swimming towards that boy would have definitely raised some concerns. At first, Ed Dusenberry thinks it's another person coming in from the deeper water. They are heading straight for Harry, though. Then he sees a fin. Calling out to the boy to get out of the water, Ed grabs a pike and runs toward the shoreline. In a matter of seconds, an 11-foot, 4-inch, 1,100-pound shark is seen coming up out of the water. But why? Why did this shark go for a boy near the beach, where there were often people around? Dr. Juan Jose Alava reminds us that sharks are creatures of instinct and habit.
Remember that sharks have a system, a unique system called the ampullae or Lorenzini, which is a sensory organ, like to detect electric fields around, right? And they like to test, right? Sharks like to test first before deciding whether or not they need to eat that kind of prey. It might be well the case that that shark was there probably scavenging, eating that animal, and it happened to be that the boy was in the right place at the right time where the shark also was scavenging, and maybe he smelled it.
Harry is on the beach. He's unharmed, but the shark is now a little out of its depth. The water is too shallow for it to make a quick getaway.
What happened with the shark that they cannot see very well in the water, right? The sight is not good, so they depend in the olfactory system and the electric fields around them to try to look for food, right? So it's important. And for any shark, I think there is an opportunistic interaction to get a bite from another animal, they will do it, right?
Ed has by now gotten into the water and is wrestling, pike in hand, with the shark. He has it hooked by its tail and is trying to pull it ashore. But this only angers the shark, which is now showing its teeth. Ed is staring into the wide open shark's mouth of, as the Vancouver World put it, the genuine Hawaiian man-eating variety. If this started out as an unprovoked attack, it has now become an unprovoked attack. A lot of people would freeze in their tracks if they saw something as menacing as an angry 1,000-pound shark staring them in the face. But Ed knows not to lose his head, or his arm. Pulling his pike from the shark's tail, Ed lunges it into the shark's throat. But the shark continues to fight back. Ed doesn't know what to do now. It's too late to force the shark away. It's far too angry for that. But he also can't pull it to shore. All he can do is just wrestle with the shark for a while. But the cold is starting to set in. Ed is waist deep in water and shark blood, drenched to his skin. But the adrenaline is still there. For now, anyway. But let's not forget little Harry on shore. The alarm is raised, and soon Ed and his pike are reinforced by the strong arms of nearby mill workers, neighbors, and fishermen. They try again to drag the animal ashore, but this time the shark is only cut while the grip of the pike is loosened. It would be no good to drag the pike out of the shark's mouth, leaving it to get away, or worse, to attack. So they waited. Let's set the scene again. It's July of 1905. It's around 8 p.m. 5 or 6 people are wrestling with a shark in the shallows of Falls Creek. The shark is bleeding from its wounds. The pike is still lodged in its throat. But it's taking everyone to hold the animal still. It's been an hour and a half since the shark was spotted and attacked. But now, it was finally giving way to its wounds. The battle finally ends. Ed and his companions could now take a better look at the creature. But then they realized something.
The average length is 4.8 meters or 16 feet.
This immense animal wasn't even fully grown, and yet it was so large that they had to wait till morning before they could take it ashore. And even then, it took 20 people to drag it up out of the water. It was quite a sight to see. This gave Ed an idea. He set up a tent and started charging 10 cents a person to see the huge animal up close, which was a lot of money back then. And so Ed Dusenberry is named in our history as a shark killer and a man who's smart with his money. I don't know which is better.
Wow. I really like that story. I feel like we could see more sharks around Vancouver, maybe?
Eventually, that'd be cool. Though also kind of scary. But don't worry, it was in 1905, guys.
Well, honestly though, like seriously speaking here, you guys, I think that it's not really common to see sharks here, and I got the assignment to look into depth.
Yeah, I gave her that assignment. I am the boss. Not really, no.
We have both the assignment of talking to both of our amazing guests about this story. And I'm just going to go...
You know, we're going to go in depth. We're going to go in depth with facts about sharks and whatnot.
Yeah, and whatnot.
You know.
Let's go.
Let's just go in depth.
It is interesting to think that more than 100 years ago, in what we know as Falls Creek, a shark attack like this was seen. According to marine biologist Juan Jose Alava, the sharks are not known to attack people.
We don't hear that much about shark attacks here in BC because it's cold water, and the species that usually attack humans are basically tropical, subtropical, or kind of cold water, like the great white shark, tiger shark, bull sharks, blue shark, the oceanic tick sharks.
This species is known as the blunt-nosed six-gill shark, and is not known for attacking people unless provoked. At least, no such incidents have been reported. According to the International Shark Attack File, there has only been one deliberate attack of this species since the 1500s, and they seem to be quite calm around the presence of divers. But let's talk more about this shark. As humans, we are terrified of large sharks like the one we saw in the Jaw movie. However, this species is nothing like what we think. And since we have talked about its behavior, historian Bradley Milley says that many years ago, fear of sharks was not the public knowledge.
People knew very little about the behavior of sharks and their relationships with people. There was a widespread belief that sharks were in fact not dangerous at all to people, any species. In the early 20th century, there was a well-known American industrialist that offered some huge amount of money to anyone who could demonstrate that a shark attack had ever occurred.
In that note, Ed Dusenberry would not look like a hero today, since conserving shark is part of the ecological movements we have and we are involved nowadays.
There was a series of famous shark attacks during the First World War off the East Coast in the United States, and some historians credit those attacks with changing American public opinion on sharks and shark attacks, and actually raising awareness of the fact that sharks could sometimes be dangerous to people. And so sharks went from something that most people, even swimming in the ocean where we are so vulnerable, didn't know about or think about, to being a kind of folk devil of U.S. society. And in the wake of those attacks, the U.S. Navy, the U.S. Coast Guard, thousands of ordinary citizens undertook a massive killing campaign of every shark that they could find within reach of the northern east coast of the United States.
Falls Creek is a short, narrow inlet in the heart of Vancouver, separating downtown and West End neighborhoods from the rest of the city. Back in the day, Falls Creek was 5 times the present size and included a large tidal mudflat. This ecological rich site was blanketed with thick eelgrass, plentiful clambets, and countless songbirds. And the real question is, how did a shark like the six gills get into Falls Creek?
Today, we might expect in the future, because there is changing ocean, there is ocean warming going on, the temperature of the ocean is changing, and that might allow conditions for some shark species to conquer new habitat areas like BC waters. Also, BC waters are cold waters. That's the reason why we can see some great white shark in the offshore environment around, offshore to the west coast of Vancouver Island. So it might be not surprising that in the future, because of the changing ocean condition, because of climate change, maybe there is going to be new niches, ecological niches, or new habitat that can provide the condition for sharks to thrive, to survive in our waters.
The blonde-nosed six-gill shark is found in a latitudinal range between 6 degrees north and 48 degrees south in the Atlantic, Indian, and Pacific Oceans. But it has been seen off the coast of North and South America, from North Carolina to Argentina and Alaska to Chile. That explains a shark like this could be found near Falls Creek. The truth, though, is that this inlet preserves a lot of marine species, and sometimes we can see a number of different animals, and it is not surprising to see sharks like this.
It might be that the conditions of Falls Creek are improving and there is food availability in the sediment. In the case of water, actually might serve as a stopover, as an area in which they can rest a little bit, look for some food, and then they will continue going. But I understand there is a population that remain around here, right, of gray whales that remain around the BC waters, and it seems that Falls Creek might offer some kind of habitat suitability for gray whales in this case, right, to look for some refugee or some kind of area in which they can find food or escape from predator.
Okay, so that was like a lot of really good information. Like before we even like started working on this episode, I like my entire view of like this story, like we found some articles online and we read them and we're like, oh yeah, so it's a shark monster attack and stuff like that. And my entire view of this whole story has like changed. Like it's gone completely 180. I don't know about you, Alicia, but yeah, well, it's crazy.
It has, as a matter of fact. I feel like both Juan and Bradley gave us a lot of great information. One of the topics that I want to definitely bring up is how Bradley said that in the World War I, the view of the sharks was completely different. It has come up, I mean, how we see sharks right now, it's such a stereotype compared of like 100 years ago when people had no idea that they were supposed to be eating people or whatsoever. So that put us like in perspective, at least for me.
And it's really cool also because the articles that we found were all written past World War I, so it makes so much more sense that people are talking about sharks in this way. Because I was thinking, hey, why if back then people didn't see sharks as monsters that constantly attack people and as like a thing to fear in the ocean, then why were they writing articles like this? But then you look at it and you're like, oh, this article was actually written in 1925, which is like 20 years later, and like that's 5-6 years after World War I ends. And so if you look at that, then it like just really puts everything into perspective. And honestly, I think Juan and Bradley, they I know they've never met before, but they should start their own podcast just because they both know and they geek out about sharks so much. But they should start their own podcast.
They should, as a matter of fact. Yeah, and then the same page, speaking of like our incredible guests, Juan did mention something about seeing more sharks, or well, honestly, not seeing more sharks in Falls Creek, but in general in like the BC waters. And it's that he obviously mentioned, taking care of our oceans, making our earth a bit more blue and green, but the whole idea of like keeping a clean environment says that he said, like, as he brought up, we could see more animals, not only sharks, but whales or who knows. We have animals coming around here. Yeah. We just don't see them as often or so close to the shore.
Yeah, because killing sharks is, as Juan pointed out, that it's become illegal to kill sharks. And so Bradley said in World War I there was a mass killing of sharks. The Navy, the Army, and a lot of civilians just started killing sharks because there was this stereotype that sharks would just attack you no matter what. So, and now the population of sharks is coming back. So the chances of us seeing sharks again in Falls Creek has actually risen, I think. But don't worry. Like I said before, it's not 1905.
It's not 1905. Falls Creek, as I said as well, has changed a lot, and I don't think we mind be seeing like this animals as close, but we do want to keep like our waters clean. So we do have this type of animals, swimming around our clean oceans. And I mean, Juan also mentioned that Falls Creek has changed in a good way. I mean, it was very polluted back then, and now has come. I mean, a lot of
we gotta. Like Vancouver's pretty good at keeping things. I mean, we're trying to keep things clean. So hopefully we'll do better. But
As much as we want to keep talking about sharks, I think it's time to say goodbye to this episode. But I guess we'll see you guys on our next episode.
On the Crow Chronicles.
Again, Alicia Nolasco.
And Jeremy Lee. And we will see you guys, or you'll hear us or whoever next time.
Please follow us on Instagram, Twitter at BCIT The Crow.